Do the New Orleans Saints have the edge in the NFC South over the Atlanta Falcons, over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, over the Carolina Panthers? Ladies and gentlemen, today we'll be talking about where exactly the Saints fit in the NFC South. We'll be previewing the NFC South with T-Bob, Jacob Hester on Off the Bench. I think the Saints and the Falcons and the Bucs are relatively similar. Okay, I've said that before. I had a commenter who put it very well. He said, throw the Saints, throw the Buccaneers, throw the Falcons in a bag, shake it up. Whoever comes out, that's your division champion. It's that tight. I think the three teams are very similar, how they're built, very similar in their situations. The Panthers are horrific. They are a terrible team. They are probably the worst team in the NFL. And by probably, I mean definitely. Bryce Young is a disaster. Front office, disaster. Owner, disaster. Panthers are a non-starter, okay? If you're typing the Panthers are going to win the NFC South or the Panthers are going to surprise people, at this point, I'd be shocked if they won 5 games. So we'll shelve the Panthers for now. Now let's get into what T-Bob and Jacob think about the NFC South. I shall react, and you shall be watching some of the highest quality entertainment possible on YouTube.
If the Saints are going to do anything this year, they're going to have to do well in their NFC South games, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure. But the South, the way I usually preview divisionals is teams that are close, like the Bucs, like the Falcons, like the Saints. I usually split them, okay? I usually split them and say, who was it, King Herod? Is King Herod, who was the one who said to split the baby, and then the actual mother said, I would rather the baby be given to not the actual mother than be split in half? Was that King Herod? Someone double check me there. We got off on a tangent there. Not sure what the hell we were talking about. We shall continue.
I guess it's
splitting wins. So I think you can split. So I think you can split the wins between the Falcons and the Bucs. Go 1-1 against each one of them. Sweep the Panthers. You got to take care of business against the teams you're favored against. You know, teams like the Giants, the Commanders, the Broncos, the Raiders. You have to win those games. So if you go 1-1 against the Bucs, 1-1 against the Falcons, 2-0 in the Panthers, take care of business, and then you win a game you're not supposed to, like against Dallas or like against the Browns or the Chargers. If you do something like that, that is how you get to 10 wins. That's how you get to 9. 10 wins, I think, wins you the division. So that's how you get there. What you cannot do is drop games that you're not supposed to. When you're already a team on the fringe, because as we saw last year, the difference between 9 wins and 10 wins is the difference between not winning the division, not going to the playoffs, and the season being a disaster. So when you're right on that razor's edge, you can't afford to drop games.
Almost like, whatever, that's any team in the NFL. I guess what I'm saying that is the NFC South was garbage the last couple of years, and preseason we kind of thought the Saints probably should be the best team.
Yes.
They failed to be that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm trying.
Well, actually, it's not true. That's actually not true. They failed to win enough games to win the division, but they were the best team. Now, I can already hear people saying, slobbering all over their Dragon Ball Z pajamas and saying that, no, the Buccaneers won the division. They were the best team. Let's go to DVOA ranking. So if you go to DVOA, the Saints were the 15th best team. Now, DVOA isn't the end-all be-all, but it is a weighted, bit of a better view of how a team performs versus offensively and defensively than just shallow stats, right? So the Saints were the 15th best team in the NFL according to DVOA. Tampa Bay was the 18th. Atlanta was the 28th team, yuck, and Carolina was the 32nd team, yuck. So actually the Saints were the best team. We were right about that. They were the best team. Unfortunately, the best teams don't always win the games they're supposed to. Unfortunately, there are injuries, a la Derek Carr's shoulder. So I got to push back on that a little bit. The Saints were the best team in the NFC South last season.
Trying to think about the most disappointing highlights. Certainly 2 years ago, losing to Carolina that last game and finishing 7-10 instead of 8-9 and missing that season win total was pretty just awful and inexcusable. What were the most disappointing NFC South losses last year?
When you had
the Falcons on Thanksgiving when I couldn't even eat my sweet potato casserole because we kicked 6 field goals and got dog walked in Atlanta coming off of a bye week after getting dog walked in Minnesota. Derek Carr playing before he should have been playing. He was injured. First game against the Bucs in the Dome, where the Bucs, Baker Mayfield looked like prime Cam Newton. Those weren't very fun last season. I will also push back on the idea that you have to win your NFC South games. When you are a fringe team like the Saints, you can split games, like splitting the Falcons games, splitting the Bucs games. That's okay, as long as you take care of business against Carolina. Again, what you can't do is drop games. We can't drop games at home. Last year, dropping the Tampa Bay game at home cost us the division, right? Dropping the Green Bay game cost us the division. So it's a razor's edge. And spoiler alert, it will be a razor's edge again this year, since we're all going to be kind of packed in there. So you just got to kind of win the games you're supposed to, win home games, win games you're favorited whenever you're facing rookie quarterbacks and, Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew.
The Bucs at home early in the year, because think about it, the Bucs, they didn't
they
find
beat
their
the hell out
stride
of
till
us.
the end of the year. Like, they may have been
that was Kamara's first game back. Carr was hurt.
26-9.
No, they beat the crap out of you. Like, it wasn't even close.
It's a game where Derek Carr had like 30 passing yards until the fourth quarter.
I
was there.
You were there.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
What was that building like? Have you been in a sadder Superdome than that?
Oh yeah,
the first half of the Lions game.
When we played the Jaguars Thursday Night Football, me and Dev went to that game. I
was there too.
Shout out to River Paris.
31-24, you lose that one.
Yeah, that was.
Foster Moreau off of Foster Moreau's hands.
Moreau dropped the touchdown in the back of the end. That game. Yeah, that one was. That one. Yeah, because you should have won. The Jaguars were. I don't feel like they were the better team that day. We just could not execute anything.
Yeah,
and it was Boo and Carr, and I was, it was bad.
So last year,
Yeah, I'm looking at the box score, T-Bob. Like, you're right. Carr was efficient. He was 20. He had 23 completions, 127 yards.
Yeah, the Bucs game. If y'all don't remember, the Bucs game I believe that was Kamara's first game back. It was either his first game back or his last game of his suspension. I think it was his first game back. Carr was hurt. That was the week after Green Bay, so Carr probably shouldn't even have played. And it was a total mess. It was a horrible, horrible game.
Yeah, that was the game he had like 35 yards passing at halftime.
Yeah, that doesn't count as efficient. That counts
like
as
his completion percentage, like, because you were like, oh, he's throwing a lot of passes, but they were like for 2 yards.
No, that's just check down BS, no threat whatsoever. And so it is interesting. So the NFC South started horribly last year. You get dominated by Tampa at home. You lose to Atlanta in Atlanta week 12. You barely beat Carolina to begin the year.
It's not totally true either. We were dominating Carolina. They came back at the very end there, made it a 3-point game, but we were never in danger of losing that game.
But, you did finish strong. You dominated Atlanta week 18. You beat Baker Mayfield and your Bucks Taylor week 17 in Tampa. You dominate Carolina at home in week 14, 26. So
dominated Atlanta.
Why I'm going through all this.
What's kind of funny about the Saints' schedules? We won 4 out of 5 games last season, right? To end the game, in the season, and everyone's always like, "Well, it was against weak competition." 3 of the 4 games were our divisional opponents. It was weak competition, but it was the Falcons, the Bucs, and the Panthers. The other one was the Giants. So whenever people are like, "Well, you can't count those because those are weak competition," well, we just so happen to see that weak competition 2 times a year. So you need to win those games. So the fact that we beat those teams to end the season, it's not like we were beating teams we'll never play again. We're going to play them next year, and then the next year, and then the next year, and then the next year. So it's good that we won those games.
I'm trying to figure out, where do we think the Saints rank in the NFC South? They split last year. They actually did better than I thought they did. They split with the Bucs and Falcons, and they swept the Panthers.
Yeah, same thing we need to do this year. And I've already answered the question. The Saints are, if you look at the Falcons, let's go back to DVOA. If you look at the Falcons, okay, Falcons were the 28th ranked team. 28th. Offensively, they were 24th. Defensively, they were 24th. That's asking a whole lot of Kirk Cousins. This is where I don't totally understand this Atlanta infatuation. Atlanta had the easiest schedule in the NFL last year. What did they do with the easiest schedule? They were the 28th ranked team as far as like DVOA. They had the 24th worst defense against the easiest schedule and had the 24th ranked offense. So let's say Kirk Cousins boosts their offense 10 slots and he drags them from 24th to 14th. They will be, so to give you some idea of what the offenses were last year. The Saints were, where are the Saints? Why am I missing this? I know they're 17th. Okay, so the Saints were 17th. 14th offense last year were the Texans. Bang average, dead even, right? Or they're actually 1%. 1% was their DVOA. I thought it was 0. I was looking at the wrong column. So 14th, Houston, 1%. Pittsburgh was 15. Okay, Saints again were 17. So if he drags them all the way up to 14, that's about how they'll look. Indianapolis was 13. Seattle was 12. Just give you an idea of the team. Defensively, though, Kirk Cousins isn't going to do much on that side of the ball, right? Raheem Morris, unknown. Failed as a head coach before. Who knows? Zach Robinson, I would think an upgrade over Arthur Smith, but I don't know. We've never seen Zach Robinson call plays. I have an idea of what they're going to want to do, but will they, like, how will it look? I don't know. Cousins coming off of an Achilles. He's older. Michael Penix issues. Who knows? All I'm saying is it's a lot to just assume that because of Kirk Cousins' arrival, because this team did punt on a first-round pick, even if Penix works out, more than likely he's not going to play this year. And so they didn't get better with their first-round pick like the Saints did with Fuaga. Punted the first-round pick. I just think it's a big ask to go from 28th and 7-10 to go all the way up to all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely an 11-win, definitely going to be the NFC South champion. No doubt about it. I think the Saints, like I said, the Saints, Bucks, Falcons are 1A, 1B, and 1C. Do I think the Saints are the better team? Yeah, I think they were the better team last year. They were the better team last year, so I have no reason. I think they improved. I have no reason to say they won't be the better team this year. Does that mean that they're definitely going to win the division? No. But I'd give those three equal chances to win the South is how I would cut it up.
If you're able to do that again this year,
you're 4-2.
I think you're probably like 8-9 if you do that again this year.
So we did the schedule predictor, and we did that where we split the divisional games and we swept Carolina. When you do that, and then you also play the Commanders, you also play the Giants, you also play the Raiders, you're playing some weak teams. You're playing some weak quarterbacks. You're playing some games where it's like, man, we should win this game. The Saints are favored in some of those games. Like I had a commenter say that Vegas thinks the Saints will go 0-17. No, they do not. The Saints are 5-point favorites to start the year against the Panthers. The Saints are favorites on the road against the Panthers. The favorites are 1-point dogs or 2-point dogs against the Browns. They're 1.5-point dogs against the Rams. Even Vegas, who knows a whole hell of a lot more than most analysts, or all analysts really, even Vegas thinks, some of these are coin flips. And I'll tell you this right now, if you do win those games, if you beat, we're favorites against the Broncos. If you beat the coin flip games where they have us as 1 or 2 point dogs like the Rams and the Browns, you flip those games, this is a 9-win team. This is a 10-win team. That's not even me putting on my Saints hat. That's not even bias. If you just go by the Vegas lines, win the games you're supposed to win, coin flip games, anything 3 or under, especially if you're at home, which would be Browns, Chargers, Rams, games like that. You flip a couple of those, we don't need much. We're not like the Chiefs aren't in our division. You don't have to win 12, 13 games to win the division. We're not playing the Ravens and the Bengals where, hey, you got to win 12 games or there's no way you win the division. We've got to win 10. If we win 10, we're right there, right? So it's not a huge ask. All you got to do is flip some of those games. And I'm sure if I didn't tell you what the lines were, you'd say, Oh, we're going to get smoked by the Rams. We're going to get crushed by the Browns. Okay. Well, you might want to get in your car, get an Uber, head on down to Harrah's and make a big bet, because you are in the minority of that thought. Because Vegas believes that ain't the case. Vegas believes it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a real close game. So I understand that people, and I think the Rams are a better team than the Saints too, but 2-point dog at home, anything can happen.
So that's whatever.
So it's doable. You're saying it's doable.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess none of this is very exciting, even if you do pretty well in the NFC South. I thought maybe that would be a bit better than it was. But what do you think? Are you better than the Bucs preseason?
Yeah, I think you're better than the Bucs, because the Bucs losing Canales is a huge thing for the Bucs. Like losing your quarterback whisperer right after you give your quarterback $100 million because you think he's, whatever. Like that is a huge loss for Baker. The Bucs are okay. Their roster, kind of an aging roster, much like ours, but same core. It's all similar. But I think losing a coordinator like that is kind of the opposite of the Saints, where losing Carmichael is a huge bonus. Losing Canales is, that's tough for the Bucs. We'll see.
I don't know, because I do think the Saints got a little bit better, but the Bucs were better.
That was the other question I wanted to ask. Did the Saints get better this offseason?
Objectively, they got better. There's no way you can say they didn't get better. What were the Saints' biggest problems? Offensive coaching staff, complete overhaul. Offensive line, Talise Fuaga. Pass rush, Chase Young. Even if you don't think they're much better, they did get better. They improved and addressed their biggest issues. So how are they not better?
Maybe. It depends on what their draft picks did. I thought they drafted well. So I'm saying, if McKinstry works out and all that, I thought they drafted well. The problem is, you were worse than the Bucs last year. They didn't get a ton worse.
You weren't worse than the Bucs last year. You had a worse record than the Bucs last year. There's a difference.
You lose Devin White, but I mean, honestly, he fell out of
favor.
He
wasn't playing. Yeah, he wasn't playing.
Devin White was ass. Devin White was one of the worst linebackers in the NFL last year. He was getting by on name value alone. He wasn't even playing at the end of the season. They couldn't even play him because his value per snap was so low.
Britt passed him up. They just re-signed Winfield. They signed Baker and Mike Evans to a long-term deal. They were good together.
Rashad White.
They got Rashad White. He's back again. He was really good at the back half of the year.
Yeah, but the Saints got...
But none of that matters. I cannot stand when people do that. When it's like, why is a team good? And they just name their roster. That does not tell me why they're good. That just tells me who's on the team. I know who's on the team. I know who's on the Bucs. They re-signed Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. That doesn't do anything for... It's just the same players. I don't care what their contract looks like. I don't care what he just named all the players that were there last year. They didn't do anything to get better. All they did was lose the guy who unlocked Baker Mayfield. How are we not talking about that? How are we not talking about the fact that he's gone?
Kubiak. Okay, from Kyle Shanahan's system.
They do. They have Kubiak. We haven't seen him yet. What's he going to be? And the Bucs haven't gotten worse. I don't know if they've gotten better, but they haven't gotten worse. How much better have the Saints gotten is the biggest question.
I think for the Saints, Jake, I think it's just all O-line.
I think so.
Actually, it's not, because we've talked about this in a few videos this week, but Clint Kubiak, that offense, that style, the packages he runs, it actually takes a lot of the onus off of the offensive line. If you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they don't have a good offensive line. You look at the Los Angeles Rams, they haven't had a good offensive line. Those systems don't need a good offensive line because of how they're ran. The reason for pre-snap motion and all of the creativity is to have quick, fast decisions off mismatches, and you're not having Derek Carr sit back there on a 15-step drop while your plays develop. How many sacks did we see with Pete Carmichael where Derek Carr's standing there, and when he takes a sack, the receivers aren't even close to the top of their routes because he's calling all these huge, long, slow plays. That's the opposite of the Clint Kubiak offense. Wide zone runs, all that stuff. It's not going to be the same. It does matter. Like, all that stuff has to be incorporated into your analysis. It has to be incorporated into your preview of this season. I've used this stat, I think, in every video, and I might say it for every video for the rest of time. 0 times did Pete Carmichael call a play, did the Saints run a play with 2 running backs on the field? 0. 36% of the time, San Francisco had 2 running backs on the field at the same time. That is such a big difference in philosophy and how a team will look the fact that no one is bringing it up is absolutely insane. Is absolutely crazy that I'm the only person bringing that up. Me and my boy Adam Chernoff, where I got that stat. You are going from 0% of the time to a third of the time. Like, it's going to be a completely different offense. And this is the part where I think we're getting lost in some of the coverage. Is when they say, well, how will a team be different? And they say, or how will a team got better? How did the team get worse? And they say, oh, well, Bub Means, we drafted this guy. Or, oh, Mike Evans got this contract. Oh, Baker Mayfield got this contract. You got to look at what you're doing on the field. What is the per play situation? What's the efficiency? What are the sets? What do you do? What do you want to do? All right. The data is out there. It is irresponsible to just name the roster and that's it. Like, think about how big of a deal it is. Just the 2 running back set. Just that. Think about how big of a deal that is. That you're changing something 40%. You're increasing something, let's just say let's just round down. Let's say 30% you're increasing. You're increasing just that set, 30%. What does that do to a team? What does that do to an offense? What does that do to Derek Carr? What does that do to Alvin Kamara? What does that do to your offensive line? That increase, this is going to be controversial yet brave. That increase in that set means more to the Saints offense than any of the info we've got from Ryan Ramczyk. I'll tell you that. Whether Ryan Ramczyk plays or not will not impact the Saints as much as just the 30% increase in 2-back sets that Clint Kubiak's going to run. That's a fact, Jack.
Oh yeah, I mean, all comes down to that. Carr. Can that O-line overplay what we think they'll be?
I mean, the O-line, if they don't protect, Carr's not a quarterback that can throw off the mark.
Especially
He's
bad.
Not. And certainly when he gets pressure from the interior, he just turns into an even worse quarterback. And so the offensive line, like if you give him time, he's been in the league long enough. He can make plays down the field. But if you don't, if you're not really special up front, then he's not the same quarterback, and you're not.
Or what if you don't ask your offensive line to do that? What if you instill a system where Carr is not asked to hold the ball? What if you instill a system where Carr is not asked to drop back and wait and let these long routes develop? What about them? What if you ask Derek Carr to be Brock Purdy? Can he do that? Because that sounds like that's kind of his thing. Sounds like, being efficient, reading the field, seeing the pre-snap development, a run-first, run-heavy offense. Seems like that kind of fits perfect for Derek Carr, doesn't it? Seems like that's what we should be talking about. That's a huge benefit to us. It's a huge benefit to the Saints.
Not going to be special up front. And so I start to look, as y'all were talking, what the Bucs lost. They didn't lose a ton. To Taylor's point, you add in a couple of really nice players as well through the draft, and I don't know that the Bucs are going to go away. Now, they're all going, for them, it's all going to fall on, is Baker Mayfield going to be the same guy? Can he replicate what he did a year ago? Because that was the reason that they ended up being who they were.
I can actually see you. In the most optimistic view, I could see you maybe
10 wins,
getting to 9 wins going into the Week 18 matchup
against the Bucs. Yeah,
very optimistic.
But that would take. I think that would take a 4-1 NFC South record at that point, and you'd have to push that to 5-1 to get to 10 wins. And so that gets back to our conversation about who he thinks best South, because everybody seems to think it's just the Atlanta Falcons, right?
And that's not the case.
Kirk Cousins, without a doubt, the best quarterback in the conference. They'd probably go Kirk, Baker, Carr, Bryce Young at this point. I imagine.
I've got Carr over Baker. It's not worth talking about. We've already talked about that a million times. I don't think it's that big of a difference. Like, I've got Carr. When we did our quarterback power ranking, I had him as like the 17th best quarterback. I probably had Baker like 20 or 21. I don't think it's that big of a difference. So whether you have Carr as 2 or Carr as 3, there's not that much separating all the quarterbacks. Bryce Young is ass on a stick. So he's terrible. So we're not counting him. But however you rank Baker, Carr, and Cousins, I don't think matters.
Bijan Robinson should be much better if, like,
and we still know because
you actually play him, like give him the ball.
Old Art didn't really give him the ball, didn't feature him much.
That's the thing with the Falcons is you've got a whole bunch of hype and you got a whole bunch of maybe. Maybe Bijan's really special. Is he? I don't know. Bijan averaged, 4.6 yards a carry last year? He was all right. At times he was special. ESPN liked him. He had a lot of cool highlights. But am I ready to say that Bijan Robinson is the next, he's the next Christian McCaffrey? No, I'm not ready to say that. And not to mention, ladies and gentlemen, the Falcons had a top 5 offensive line last year. So really think about this. And I hate that I'm making this point late in the video. The Falcons had the easiest schedule in the NFL with a top 5 offensive line. They go 7-10. They had the 24th ranked offense DVOA, 28th overall team DVOA, 24th ranked defense, and Bijan Robinson was average. Now, a lot of that, yeah, sure, is the quarterback, but how much of it? Because the more I hear these numbers and the more I really think about it, the more I'm like, damn. I mean, you're putting a whole lot on the quarterback at that point. Drake London, how good is he? I don't know. Kyle Pitts, he has done absolutely nothing. Are we just expecting all of this hype, all of this maybe, all of this to be unlocked because of Kirk Cousins' arrival? What if we get the best version of Kirk Cousins? What if we get exactly what Minnesota was? You know what Minnesota was every year? Completely irrelevant. You know what, like Minnesota every year was just kind of a fraudulent team. Maybe they luck into double-digit wins to get dog-walked in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's not like Tom Brady showing up. Not to mention Kirk's on a bad wheel. So, I don't know. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I would much rather have Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave than Bijan Robinson and Drake London.
I love that the Steelers went and snagged Arthur Smith. They're like, oh wait, did he just put together, the only offense that was comparably bad to Pete Carmichael in terms of being old school and not using creative concepts and having Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and not featuring the ball? Yeah, hell yeah. Bring him to Pittsburgh.
To replace Matt Canada.
Yeah, to replace Matt Canada. Mike Tomlin's got a little Kirk Ferentz in him. You know what I'm saying?
A little bit.
Very consistent.
Consistent.
Absolutely gets the most out of his players. Awesome coach in a lot of ways. But I'll be damned if sometimes it doesn't seem like he hates offense.
Well, and look who they brought in. Like, they were great at one time, but, like, he brings in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Nobody wanted Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
No.
I think Justin Fields got a raw deal. I think there's
Fields probably did. I think Fields did. But I mean,
something in his game that with the right coach, right situation,
hell yeah,
he could have a very.
I mean, the Bears weren't bad last year. Like the Bears, the Bears had the first overall pick, so I think people think the Bears were terrible. Let's look at DVOA. Where was Chicago? So Chicago had the 22nd ranked offense. They were 7-10. They were the 22nd ranked team, and they had the 17th ranked defense.
Now Russell Wilson washed.
Well, I mean, look, yeah, with Justin Fields, like it's definitely, I mean, it's enticing, right? Like, yeah. I would love to take a shot on Justin Fields. If nothing else, it's exciting, even if he ends up sucking. Who do you think's better? Or do we think, though, the Falcons, because of Kirk Cousins, does that move alone? And I'm kind of a Raheem Morris believer, though. There's, we'll see how that goes with him as being the head man in charge. But sometimes change is just inherently good. Do we think the Falcons are unquestioned the best team in the NFC South?
I think they have the best weapons. They have the best roster as well, not just weapons on offense. I mean, you look at who they have at receiver in Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore.
So the Falcons went 7-10 with the worst or the easiest schedule with a top 5 offensive line. And the reason for them being the best team is we're in Darnell Mooney territory. I don't know if I would consider that a great weapon. I'm not lying. That's not really striking fear into my heart, is when I hear that Darnell Mooney is across the sideline. Because the roster is not that much different than last year. Sans Kirk Cousins. And we saw what that roster did. Greatly underperformed. They weren't even close to whatever you think the Saints did. Like that kind of shows you, when you can be too close to a team, when you're looking at the Saints, you're like, man, this was a very disappointing season. I hate what I saw. This was complete garbage. But then you can kind of give Atlanta a pass. Because Atlanta, you're like, well, yeah, 7-10. Yeah, it's way worse than the Saints. Yeah, they were ranked way worse. Yeah, all their value metrics are way worse. But they got a new quarterback. You could argue. Same thing with the Saints, right? You could argue that, well, the worst thing about them was their offensive play calling. They got a new offensive play caller. So you could argue the same way. You could say, well, they have to have gotten better. That offensive play caller is going to unlock all of these weapons they have. Now, we don't have a Darnell Mooney on the team, but alas.
And they've got a good offensive front, and
they do have that.
Hope you can get the most out of Kyle Pitts, and that's going to be one thing. Kirk Cousins, as a veteran leader, he needs to make sure he gets the most out of Kyle Pitts, and the play callers, obviously, with Bijan Robinson and Pitts. I mean, that's a lot of weapons. That is a lot of firepower on one side of the football. And they got a couple of pieces that you know very well on defense, and Caden Ellis and Onyemata to go along with a Grady Jarrett, a Jesse Bates, a A.J. Terrell. I mean, they on paper right now, I think it's hard to deny them not being the best team in the NFC South.
Taylor, I saw you crinkling up your nose. You have a minute to talk about your Bucs.
No, I'd go Falcons as well,
okay.
Only because all of these teams were so equal a year ago, and we talked about it. The Bucs didn't get worse. They didn't get a ton better.
But that part's not true either. Like, all these teams were equal a year ago, except for the Falcons, who were markedly worse than all the other ones. All the other ones being the Bucs and the Saints. Like, did we just forget that the Falcons were markedly worse than those two teams? We just looked at DVOA. We just looked at all of it. They weren't right there. They were 7-10. They were horrific. So the idea that they were right there and now they're better, so they have to go from, where the Saints and the Bucs were 9 wins to all of a sudden now they go to 11 wins. People are forgetting. They were 7-10. They lost to the Panthers. Like, no one's talking about that. I understand that Kirk Cousins is an upgrade, but you can't just say they were bottom 5 in offense. They were bottom 8 in defense. They were all these awful things with the easiest schedule. They lost to the Panthers. Bijan Robinson was average. He was whatever. Like, you can't say all that and then be like, oh, well, that all goes away because of Kirk Cousins. Like, man, I don't know. He definitely makes them better, but how much better? Just right there is all you. I don't know if everyone got the Men in Black memory eraser, but even that sentence right there, where they were all so close together, and then you think about just how much worse the Falcons really were.
The Saints going to be the Falcons. I think Kirk Cousins does put them over the top. Everybody has new coaching, right? You don't know what.
But I just can't get over it. Kirk Cousins does put them over the top. The top of what? They were 7-10. Kirk Cousins, he takes them over that hump. They were just a quarterback away. They were 7-10. If Kirk Cousins adds 3 wins, which is nuts to think that he'll come in and just add 3 wins to a team. If he adds 3 wins, they're going to be in the conversation with the Bucs and the Saints. 10 wins is the conversation. The Bucs, the Saints, and the Falcons are all chasing 10 wins. It's going to finish with like 10 win, 9 win, 8 win. It's going to be right. It's going to be just like that. And then the Panthers will be horrific. But it's just nuts that we're sitting here talking about the Falcons like they were a player away. I've never heard a 7-win team get so much like grace.
Morris is going to do.
So like a 7-win team with a coach, a head coach who has failed previously, and an offensive coordinator who has never called plays. And a quarterback off of an Achilles injury. Like, really think about what people are saying. People are sitting here telling me the Falcons they were right there last year, and now all they needed was Kirk Cousins, and now they're going to be whatever team. And then, like, no one's mentioning all the other moving pieces and the complete failure of a year last year.
But Dave Canales is not there with Baker as OC last year. They worked really well together. Now they bring in Liam Cohen, who we worked with the Rams, but is that going to translate over? How are Carr and Kubiak going to work together? I think that Kirk Cousins has experienced the fact that they were all so close last year, and you have a
They weren't. They were not all close last year.
Significant improvement at quarterback. I think that puts the Falcons over the top.
Yeah, that's fair, right? Like with the other teams, it's you can debate whether or not they improved. Signing Cousins is probably for sure an improvement. So tough sledding for your New Orleans Saints.
Wow. I don't think so. I'm not saying the Saints are definitely going to win the division, but I don't think it's tough sledding at all. I mean, I think the teams are pretty even. Pretty damn even. I just don't. I definitely think Cousins makes the Falcons better. But again, this was a bad football team last year. You're talking about a bad football team last year that improved. Okay. But the Saints were 9-8 and they improved. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Kirk Cousins might have the greatest PR agent of all time because he has magically made a lot of problems in Atlanta go away. And people are just anointing the Falcons as division champions. I don't get it. I really don't. I think it's a three-way race. I think it's going to be a very competitive season. Again, I think you have to split those. You have to split the Bucs and the Falcons, and you have to sweep the Panthers. So, sweep the Panthers, do something the Falcons couldn't do last year. But we'll see. Let me know in the comments below, where do you have these teams ranked? Who do you think wins the South? Do you think the Falcons are overhyped? Let me know. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.